Great job. I want to say this. You do a great job from the platform, from the pulpit, of just saying, hey, here's what we're personally investing, whether it's Highlands College, whether it's a missions, something we're doing in missions or outreach. I think it's important for the communicator to tell everybody else where they're passionate about, where they're giving, where they're leaning into.
Absolutely. And the third point that I think churches need to think about in these 12 points is be generous.
Right.
And you'll probably remember too, in the earlier years especially, we were looking for ways just to, again, not ask for generosity, but to model generosity. So I remember early on, we probably should do this again sometime, just surprise our church. But I remember early on, our benedictions sometimes would be, hey, everybody, there's, ice cream sandwiches at the door. I know it's a hot July day, but we wanted to invest in you guys. And we would get standing ovations. Like, I can't believe this church's benediction was not only God bless you, but hey, have a little treat on your way home. And Matt, those things were like a nickel a piece.
Right.
The investment was so small, but just to model generosity, we to this day give away all of our resources to our local church family. One of the things that kind of bothered me before I even became a senior pastor was how the church were selling at the time. Of course, we don't do this anymore because of online content, but selling the cassette tapes. Yep. And I kept thinking, I want a copy of this message, but they're selling it to me with the money I gave in the offering plate.
Right.
Like everything you bought to produce this cassette came from what I gave. And I remember just thinking that as someone who's attending church for years. And I remember one of our first decisions was we were going to be as generous as we possibly could. So we would tell people, hey, everybody, there's resources out in the lobby. There's cassette tapes. There's CDs. It would go on to be, take them. Right. And we would say it this way, they're yours. We made them with the money. Right. We made them with the money you gave. And you could just see people's faces thinking, wow, I've never really thought about it that way. But anyway, I want to read a verse and we got to get moving because we have a lot more principles to cover. But 2 Corinthians 8:7 says, but just as you excel in everything, in your faith and speech, knowledge, complete earnestness, and your love for us, see to it that you also excel in the grace of giving.
So how do we do that? How do we develop a culture of generosity? What are some practical things we can do financially inside our church to help us get there?
Yeah, so number 4, the principle here is we've got to be sure, like my dad taught me, set budget, and I call them ceilings and floors. In other words, there's set ceilings for, well, we'll never spend more than this percentage, and then floors, we'll never give less than this percentage. And we probably should move on to the next point, but I would say for missions, for us, our floor is 10%. We're never going to give less than that. Right. And then we set budget ceilings in 2 areas that are critical, I think, Matt, is that in buildings, the amount of money that goes to buildings, because the more money you spend on buildings, the less you spend on people. And then, of course, on salaries. And as I've been working with churches, and of course, a lot of what Grow does to help and serve and consult and mentor leaders and churches, is we see sometimes those are the 2 areas right. that get out of balance, and that is in buildings and in salaries.
So I want to jump right into the next point, because you can't have the ones we just talked about without having margin, and just the principle of margin. How do we create it?
Yeah, number 5 is create margin. And I've been preaching this one for a long time. This one came from my pastor as well. Proverbs 21:20, in the house of a wise person are stores of choice food and oil. It's the fool that spends all they have. And one of the common thoughts in church world was spend everything, raise money for extra things. And so they were always actually had committed to projects beyond what the church was giving. And now the pastor's under this pressure to take this offering or to do this campaign to pay for things they already committed to. I say we do the opposite. So when we started our church 20 years ago, we wrote it into the bylaws of our church that a budget of our church would always be 90% of the previous year's income. So we're going into every year with 10% margin. And if the church finances grow, the margin increases because you were budgeting on the last year. And here's what that produces, and this is so huge, Matt, and that is, then I'm never behind the pulpit needing that Sunday's offering. And I think when pastors get in that place where they're under that kind of pressure, they preach differently. And that's when people honestly sometimes start going to other churches, because they can sense that. So we teach this margin principle. And margin, by the way, is not savings. Margin is just uncommitted money. We end up giving and investing everything our people give. It's not sitting in a savings account. We have a savings account, but that's not the purpose of margin. Margin's just so you're not under pressure. So what it does is it allows us to say yes to a lot of things. I mean, when a tragedy happens, we're not taking offerings. We have the money. We can go invest into that disaster in our response, or it just allows us to say yes to a lot of things.
It allows you to say yes on the outside for the church. It also allows your staff to hear the word yes a whole lot. So when the creative team says, hey, we need this new camera, the answer is yes. Let's look at it for next year. Hey, we need a new keyboard. The answer is yes. Let's look at it for next year.
Exactly. And so I really encourage people, by the way, to not only lead their organizations this way, but it's important for you to lead your life this way as well. Because margin is the space between yourself and your limits. So let me say that again. Margin is the space between yourself and your limits. And too many people are living up to their limits, and that's why they're under pressure, and that has to change.